Obviously. Yeah, that's looking about right. Just the way I remember it. Yeah, I don't usually wear these V-necks. Yeah, I've been having deja vu all today. Like most days, of course. There's a lot riding on today. Here's a good trick. Never look at yourself. Now drape this silver fabric. I keep that thing around my head and I drape it over, you know. It lessens the reception in transmission. And I got this sleeping bag encasement. It unvelcros, and you know, you got a fairly sizable blanket. Well, my usual annoying self, you know, very repellent. Let me try to break through the programming. Yeah, lapis lazuli, you know, the favored stone of Cleopatra. You know, it's helpful. You know, stuff is real helpful. It's a little, you know, static, you know, solid state computer, you know. Different stones have a different spirit attached to them. Anyway, folks, what is it I wanted to say? Bear with me. Bear with me. So, I want to relate the rest of the experience involving the lead singer of the Cranberries. This must have been in 1988 in Walport, Oregon. It's a seaside a town. Now it must have been a Sunday. We were visiting my my paternal grandparents. My father, he'd been raised Catholic, but he'd you know, parted company with the church. Still, for most of my life growing up, our family was church going, except we attended Protestant services. But that day, you know, this was the church my grandparents would go to. And so he thought, you know, hey, why not, you know, the kids, they should see what a Catholic service is like. You know, that's educational. So that's what you know. We went. It's strange. It almost makes me think that possibly my father was in on this whole thing. Though, you know, down in Mexico, he'd been the CIA. You know, had become interested in his activities down there, and he was kind of a hustler. He would do various things. You know, kind of a promoter, and he basically engineered his own self-employment. You know, down there. he worked as an agent for various hotels and different things. But yeah, he was involved. I think he was involved in some drug smuggling, and I do think the CIA. But in this book he was writing before his death, he had that those people pegged as Interpol, and that's an international intelligence agency, so it's less controversial. But I believe that they're the CIA, but so it could be they had him under some degree of mind control. That's a possibility. And then there was a story about my uncle Frank, and anyway, I think that's a pretty common little ruse or uh, delusion they foster in a subject as though your family's involved with the CIA. And so it's all in the family, and nothing bad will happen to you, that kind of thing. I remember meeting Uncle Frank on one occasion, growing up. Maybe this was probably in 1987. You know, that was at least a few hours. That was a couple of hours worth of hazy experience. But nobody remembers Uncle Frank. And they would have had to erase a lot of memories from a lot of different people, or they. Well, I mean, some of this is accomplished through these Mandela effects, and I'm getting it. We're traipsing into that territory. So yeah, it is interesting. So there was this room in this institutional building. I believe it was that church. I got in there. They barred the door, or they locked the door, or I remember this man, this bald headed man, well built. He had a gray mustache, like a handlebar mustache. He barred the door. So I guess they accessed me, or they just I don't know. A lot of that wasn't working. Maybe as I recall, it wasn't working too well. I'd kind of deprogrammed myself to some extent, and so they had to kind of they had to reason with me, a little bit. But they just And I remember saying to that the bald headed man with the gray mustache, well, if this is what you think is so important, why don't you do it? Why are you doing this to me? Why should I have to shoulder this burden? Pick up this cross. And I said, well, I can't. Obviously, I can't do it. You know, and I'm not you. Well, he said, I'm not you. You know, and they brought in this machine. Now it was an electromagnetic machine. You could see the wires were like U shaped. So this is all I remember of it. It was like in two different components that could be fitted into the back of a like a commercial van. But I mean, we went out. I mean, at least no, they already had it set up. But I watched them pack it up. That's the thing. After this was finished, I watched them pack it up out in the parking lot. They just threw a drop cloth over it, over the two components, and they hoisted them up into the back of this black van with occluded windows, and they had curtains, on the interior, and that's just what that's how they were transporting it. But I mean, the wires were like U-shaped, and then there was another U-shaped one, and another U-shaped one, and and there's this, this was in this rib, and they did this. It was just overlapped in that pattern. So like this basically a snaking pattern. That's like a little tip for you there, a little hint, I suppose. But other than that, I don't know anything about the design. Um, and so that is how I communicated with Dolores O'Riordan. I can't. I should look up how to pronounce the name. Who was roughly 5 years into the future in London. She said that when she got in their vehicle, it right before she was to step, into their vehicle to go to that office building where they had their uh, the other half, the other half of this relay conduit. Uh, it began to rain, you know, and she thought that was bad luck. But nevertheless, I mean, people give you these opportunities, and they say you're going to be part of something really great, and maybe you're under mind control already. I mean, you're gonna at least some degree of mind control. I mean, you're gonna proceed. You're gonna do these things. And it's not like anyway. People feel like they got to strike while the iron's hot, while they have the opportunity, and this is this limited opportunity, and you gotta proceed. And they said, I think, yeah, they told her that some great things would proceed out of it. Some really great and wonderful things would proceed out of it for her and everybody. You know, I believe some really great things did happen as a result. But so she was talking to me, and it was at this. It was just like it was like we were out on a beach. We're out on a beach. Well, we sat down on some driftwood or something. Where am I going with this? Why am I blanking? Well, yeah. What did I want to say? Well, the thing is, the thing about her was she had had some bad experiences growing up with boys whom she knew to be circumcised because they were Catholics. Now, she had had this opinion, being a good little Catholic girl. She had had this idea that everybody thought the same way as her, and we're all God's children, and we're all Catholics, and we're all just here to help each other out, and we're in the waiting room to heaven, so to speak. But then she was alarmed, to find out that's not how they saw things, and she talked to this old priest about it, and I guess he was a Jesuit, and those guys are real crafty, and You see, she'd also once had a conversation with this boy who she later found out was a Protestant, and he seemed to be a bit different. You know, he seemed to be a little more understanding or sensitive, or just a little more. He seemed to have a little more forbearance or something. And then, so she somehow she was relating this to this priest. It was like he had sort of mesmerized her, this priest, or sort of hypnotized her, so that she'd be just totally open and honest with him. And he said, maybe, well, no, maybe I'm confusing things a little bit. I think it was the bald headed man that I dealt with in Wallport, Oregon, who told me that he had that every time he had sex with his wife, he would experience pain because he was circumcised. It turns out this is a fairly common complaint of circumcised men. Now the times that I've had sex, that's like twice. I've had sex twice. I did not experience any pain at all. It was it's really really nice. You know. Um, but he explained, the bald headed man told me that every time he has sex with his wife, he experiences pain. I don't know if this is what this priest told Dolores, and that's part of why he became a priest, because it was just so disconcerting to him, that he should feel pain when he's when he's having sex. So they wanted me to alleviate this condition, at least among the Catholics. That was the mission. And somehow I was a Catholic. I'm an honorary Catholic, already, and because of my father, having been baptized into the Catholic Church and all that. And so, and the bald-headed man, he said that I was absolved of any sin, that I was to go on this special mission. See, they knew what had happened to me, that I'd been raped and programmed, and to have um, have a kind of a skewed sense of my gender identity. Now, this is something I was just, kind of. This is not something I thought about, and it's not something I was, sort of depressing. And then, but I wasn't even a teenager yet, so it was, it was something easy to kind of push to the backdrop of my mind, And so, so he said, and the church has absolved you of any sin, ahead of time. You'll basically be a saint if you can accomplish this mission for us. And so it doesn't matter if you get into some kind of sexual aberration, that would otherwise be seen as being sinful, still I was very disconcerted. I just, I like girls, and I didn't want to let them down, and I didn't want to. But this is what they did to try to, to convince me. What they did was, are we still rolling? You have not. Okay. What they did to try to convince me, through this machine, they ran a program. It was the recollection. It was they had hypnotically regressed this poor girl, who'd had this terrible experience. It was not Dolores. It was not her experience. This was something even worse. And so Dolores, she tried to sell me on this. They had her selling me on it. in this with this electromagnetic theater that was taking place across space and time. You know, in essence, this was a type of astral time machine that they had. So she said, well, I could, I could show you, what us girls go through sometimes at the hands of boys or men, and wouldn't you like to know that? And I said, yeah, I'd like to know that. I really want to help. I'm curious about the world. I want to know the truth. And so they had me experience this completely awful uh, hour or two, you know, in this girl's life. She'd been these boys. They ganged up on her and they chased her down. She was some Irish girl, and she was a Catholic, and these boys were Catholic. A similar situation to the one that Dolores described, but it was far worse. And this was a highly sensitive girl, and they really, from what I recall of it, they really devalued her. They really, really, really devalued her, and she, they made her feel as though she had no value. Though she is the thing through which humanity is re-propagated, or I'm having trouble with words. They've done a lot to me lately. It's the implants and anyway, and so she felt that it was literally the end of the world, that there's no possible way that she could ever, why would she ever want to have a husband and have a family, and how could she ever with creatures such as these, and she was up against this rock wall and some brush, and she was just in anguish, for hours. Then she finally, I don't know, it would begin to rain or something, and she got soaked through, and then she stumbled home shivering, you know, and she nearly froze to death. So that's what they had me experience. And then, but later, well, I talked anyway. Later, I came out of that, and then they had me. Then, as a contrastive element, they had me experience this record of this woman's sexual activity with a man in this little room. It was floored with pillows, but under those pillows there were these electromagnetic bioresonant signature receivers, and in the walls too, and in the ceiling, and over those they had these cloth like tapestries. It was just something nice to look at while you're having sex. I remember one was like this castle. It was like gilded. It was like at least had gold leaf. It seemed to be. I mean, one could imagine it was solid gold, and you could see vaguely the mountains and the clouds and the sun, and it just seemed like a real nice, rich country, that you were in, and everything was well in hand and safe and all that kind of thing. And they advised me, before I went into this, um, that it's okay. Oh, it's okay. It's just a woman and a man. It's okay. Oh, this is how you could experience, the world. Oh, uh, and so yeah, sure enough, there was a man there, and I was feeling everything that she was feeling about the situation. This was somebody she trusted. This is somebody that who made her feel safe, and she felt like her life was going to be everything was going to be okay. And it was yeah. So they had me experience her experience, in her body, thinking her thoughts. And sure, it was just exquisite. It was magnificent and all that. Sure, of course it was. So you see, what they do? They got this dichotomy. Oh, here's like some of the worst things you could experience as a human female, and here's some of the best what you can experience as a human female. So I mean, yeah, if you experience that, I mean, it's like that. There's a linkage between the two, and your mind starts filling in the gaps, and it creates a strong sense of identity. You know, so that's the trick they pulled on me. Now, being male, you're going to be at war. Your consciousness is going to be at war with that program, and your body and your mind will be at war with it. So it's a little it's a little much to do. I mean, I kind of felt, well, okay, well, I'm a sacrificial lamb, or I'm supposed, well, I'm supposed to do this to. They had this big scheme. I mean, about some of the art that I'd be involved in producing, and some of the things I'd do, and you know, in order to make this big spectacle, and to call attention to these very important issues, and do away with this dastardly practice of circumcision. Um, and that was not the least of it. But I mean, yeah, well, that's what happened. At least as far as that's what I remember. People are compartmented. They don't necessarily know everything that's going on, and they're often under mind control, to some extent. And I mean, Dolores, she knew she was under mind control. She told me that, but she said, but yeah, I go and do things sometimes, and I don't know that I did them, But I work for good people. These are really good people. You know, they're doing good things, is what she told me. So I mean, this is just whether she was really a participant, like in any to any extent a voluntary participant in this. It's unknown. I mean, there's ways to obtain this. There's ways to through remote neural monitoring to obtain this stuff, and a lot of this stuff it's just gonna people are gonna think it's imaginary. People are gonna think it's part of some strange set of dreams, and they're gonna just chalk it up to that. So hard to know what exactly did happen. Hard to know if this whole thing was just entirely they had me imagine the whole thing. Very hard to know. But then again, I mean, I you know. Well, that's MK Ultra for you. It's wild times. Wild times. I have a radionics machine actually that can do something similar to that. It's not as powerful. Your own body is there are interdimensional conduits. You have like actually thousands of different thousands of little chakras, or tens of thousands. And they are conduits to other dimensions. I mean, to some extent. Well, they are. It's true. But it just charges these up, and sure, you can certainly do astral time travel, if not physical time travel. That's a real thing. Well, I'm working with some new power in my corner. Get this flashlight club. This has a strobe feature, actually. Let's see. There it is. Anyway, with this, you can keep the light off center line. You keep it way the hell out here, And then, the thing is, they'll often shoot at the light, and not at you. Whereas you keep it right here, then they'll often shoot you, or the light, disabling the light. And then also, I mean, on this, you got the nails right here. You just drill it out, and then with a thinner diameter, screw than the nail, just a little thinner, not the same size. And you tap in the nails, and you hacksaw them off, and you grind them down. And this is a forked hazelnut branch, and this is just Bolteron thermal moldable plastic sheet. It just attaches like this, and yeah, I thought about making a more professional quality one. It's got like those pneumatic these little 22 cartridges, 22 blank cartridges, for some of these pneumatic tools, and it could actually fire the bolt out, and then you'd have the excess gas pressure bleed out the front, It could be a revolving mechanism. You'd have multiple shots, and then the gas pressure, go in somebody's head and cause more brain damage, So anyway, yeah, it's just this is all it is, just one piece, roughly like You see, it kind of grips it like this. This is better than drilling through. You got a gripping, and it's just regular old knots, square knots, they calls them.